She was cooking in the mess hall when the world outside shattered. The air smelled of garlic and fresh bread, the soft rhythm of knives against the cutting board filling the room, when gunfire cracked through the walls like thunder. Her hand froze mid-motion, spoon dripping oil back into the pan, as a scream split the air. For a heartbeat, she stood there in disbelief, her body refusing to accept the truth her ears already knew. But then the floor shook with the sound of boots, the echoes of men shouting in a language that carried violence in every syllable. Her name was Elena Carter. She wasn't a soldier in rank, not someone with medals pinned to her chest. She was just the cook. That's what the SEALs called her with affection, laughing that her meals were as much a weapon against despair as their rifles were against the enemy. But she was more than that. She was the one who knew each man's favorite meal, the one who noticed when they were quiet and placed an extra helping on their plate to remind them they weren't alone. She was their sister, their tether to home. And now, from the small window above the sink, she saw them, their bodies forced to the ground, wrists tied, rifles pressed against their skulls. Panic clutched her chest, stealing her breath. She had no training for this. She was not supposed to be here, not supposed to face a nightmare like this. Her knees trembled as the thought struck her, I can't do anything. I'm only the cook. But then another memory rose, nights when the SEALs, after long missions, had teased her into joining their drills. What if one day you need to defend yourself? They said, pushing a rifle into her hands, correcting her grip, showing her how to aim. They thought it was a joke. She had laughed too. Now the joke had become prophecy. Elena slipped into the storage room. Pots, sacks of flour, crates of canned beans, all of it looked absurd in the face of war. Then her eyes caught the steel-gray shape of the emergency weapons locker in the corner. She hesitated. Her fingers hovered over the keypad, the numbers she had overheard once flickering in her memory. Her breath shook as she pressed them in. One wrong digit and the lock would stay shut. She closed her eyes, whispered a prayer, and pressed the last button. A green light flashed. The click of the lock releasing was like thunder in her veins. Inside waited a rifle, cold and heavy, humming with the promise of survival. As she stepped into the narrow back passage leading outside, Elena's mind flooded with images. John, the loudmouth joker, who called her Mom every time she nagged them about vegetables. Marcus, quiet and steady, who once admitted her food reminded him of home. Davis, who never spoke much but always brought her an extra bag of flour after missions. These weren't just soldiers. They were her brothers. They had trusted her with their laughter, their secrets, their humanity. She would not let them be slaughtered while she hid behind a stove. The night air hit her face as she crept into the shadows of the yard. The scene before her burned into her soul, 10 armed men, circling the SEALs like wolves. Their leader paced, shouting orders with a sneer that reeked of cruelty. One of the SEALs lifted his head just slightly, blood dripping from his forehead. John. His eyes scanned the shadows until they found her. In that fleeting second, their gazes locked. His lips barely moved, but she understood. Do something. Please. Elena's hands trembled around the rifle. Her finger hovered over the trigger, her breath uneven. What if I miss? What if I make it worse? What if they all die because of me? Fear pressed down like a weight. But then her father's voice rose in her mind, clear as if he stood beside her. Courage isn't about not being afraid, Elena. It's about what you choose to do when fear is already there. She picked up a metal tray lying on the ground. With one deep breath, she hurled it across the far side of the yard. The clang echoed loud in the stillness, and the enemies turned, rifles swinging. In that heartbeat, she pulled the trigger. One man fell, then another. Gunfire exploded back at her, bullets slicing through the night. The yard became chaos. Elena dove behind a stack of crates, wood splintering under enemy fire. Her pulse pounded so loudly she thought it might betray her hiding spot. She fired again, the recoil jolting her shoulder, another enemy collapsing in the dirt. The SEALs ducked, giving her room, their eyes burning with a mix of disbelief and hope. Every shot was a war inside her. Her arms burned, her chest heaved, sweat stung her eyes. Her body screamed for her to stop, to drop the rifle, to surrender. But each time, she remembered their laughter in the mess hall, the way they teased her for adding too much spice, the way they always said, "You're family now." That word, family, drove her forward. She moved like a shadow, crawling, firing, retreating, firing again. The enemy leader roared, his voice desperate, angry, but one by one his men dropped. The last two charged toward her. She rolled from cover, firing until her rifle clicked empty. Silence followed. The last man's body hit the dirt. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Elena's chest rose and fell in ragged heaves, her ears ringing. The rifle slipped from her hands as she stared at the ground littered with bodies. Her heart still thundered with fear, but she was alive. They were alive. She rushed to the seals, cutting ropes with trembling hands. John groaned in relief as he pulled his arms free. Marcus gave her a look of quiet awe. Davis, blood on his lips, tried to laugh but ended up coughing instead. "You," he wheezed, shaking his head, "you're not just a cook anymore." They pulled her into their battered circle, some clapping her back, others just staring at her as if they were seeing her for the first time. John, his voice cracked and hoarse, whispered, "You just saved the whole damn team." Elena shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "I just did what I had to do." The days that followed blurred into stories that spread far beyond the base. They called her a hero, a warrior, a lioness. But Elena never wore those words comfortably. To her, it wasn't about titles or glory. It was about family, about the promise that when darkness came, she would not turn away. Her story lived on, not because she was the strongest or the most skilled, but because she proved a truth the world often forgets. The roles we are given, cook, cleaner, ordinary person, do not define the limits of our courage. When life demands more, when the people we love are in danger, every one of us carries the strength to rise, to fight, to protect. That night, Elena Carter showed the world that heroes are not always born in the battlefield. Sometimes, they are born in the kitchen, with a wooden spoon in hand, until the moment comes when they choose to fight back.